Andrew Clennell, our political editor, live in the studio with me now. Andrew, my mail is that there was only a handful of people in the room for the call. One of those told me that it was 40 minutes long and it was a very warm rapport, actually, between the Prime Minister and President. What have you heard?
Well, he looked happy, the Prime Minister, didn't he? And it could have been far worse, let's face it. So he looked extremely happy as he came out. And I think a lot of us were wondering when Donald Trump then said no exemptions, but he corrected that when he got a question about the call with the Australian Prime Minister. Kieran, even though superannuation was mentioned and the huge amounts that Australian super funds invest in America, I understand that's not linked to that. They're not looking to come up with some sort of deal for Donald Trump here. It is solely on the question of those steel and aluminium tariffs. I'm also told, and you mentioned to me yesterday that he couldn't afford to sort of beg, that was definitely not the tenor of it. So there was no please, please, please is what's been put to me by a senior government source. It was a proper leader-to-leader conversation. I'm told the phone call was arranged before the weekend. So it has been in train for some days. He must have got a bit of a shock then, the PM. Obviously, they've been trying since inauguration to schedule this call. Must have been a shock for him to get the news just before the call. Donald Trump on the way to the Super Bowl on the plane saying, hey, these tariffs are going to happen. The phone call happened around 8 a.m. this morning. So you can see the Prime Minister came out and told us almost immediately after the call, given it was 40 minutes, what happened. And the Prime Minister's told caucus today simply about it that he'll always stand up for Australia's national interests. So perhaps even bigger news than Anthony Albanese's account of the call is Donald Trump confirming it in that press conference. And that gives you real hope that there might be an actual exemption coming here, particularly that grab Cameron played where he compared it to Britain. He's saying, Britain, no chance. Anthony Albanese is a great man. This can happen. And I just wanted to repeat, no begging from our PM, so to speak. That's an awkward word. And no suggestion of any sort of deal or quid pro quo here. It will be considered on us.
And the language to go even stronger than the Prime Minister used, saying he'll give it he said great consideration. And it's interesting, you know, the personal reference, this goes to that rapport. He says he's a very fine man. I just spoke to him, he's a very fine man. And I'm told that the Prime Minister raised Jordan Mailata from the Super Bowl.
Yes, he mentioned
victory,
that this morning.
A Super Bowl winner, but also that the Prime Minister told him that he was on the board of South Sydney Rabbitohs and that Mailata was a South Sydney junior as a kid as well. So he's apparently did a bit of a deep dive into the Super Bowl as a bit of a connection.
He did indeed, and mentioned that this morning, the PM. But Prime Ministers never get this excited, do they, as they do on these discussions with world leaders and US presidents. I've observed that in a couple of them now, and I think it's for good reason, because you think about a lot of what Prime Ministers do are basically the work of the public service, Kieran, all their political staff, all their ministers, and they're almost the sales figure. Sure, they make the final decision, but this is one of a Prime Minister's most important roles, and it's basically down to them. I mean, the old saying from political staff is, I can't be him or her. I can't make that call. I can't strike the chord on that call. So when Anthony Albanese comes out there triumphant, even a little bit relieved, it's because this is actually all his work. And I've often seen that. I saw that with Scott Morrison's mood after doing the AUKUS talks with Biden and Boris Johnson. This is a time when it really is all down to the Prime Minister and one of his or her most important tasks in the job, these sorts of negotiations.
There's a lot at stake, and a senior government official said to me at 10:40, I feel like a drink. So it shows you how long the morning was for them. Andrew, thanks so much for that.